Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, where we transform everyday leadership struggles into powerful legacies that impact generations. I'm your host, Chani Wilshansky, a 20-year veteran of school leadership who has helped hundreds of school leaders achieve what many thought was impossible through our signature programs, School Leadership HQ and Enrollment Engine. With our battle-tested frameworks and blueprints, leaders have achieved 90% parent retention, 50% less staff turnover, 15% improved profit margins, and increased enrollment by 25%. My mission is simple: to revolutionize school leadership by elevating the skills, the habits, and mindset of passionate leaders ready to create lasting change. Join me as we build your legacy of excellence, one transformative conversation at a time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Schools of Excellence podcast. So I don't usually do guests, actually. For those of you that have followed the show for a while, I think I've had maybe 3 guests on the show. And the reason for that is lots of reasons, mainly because I have a very specific quality of content and conversation that I like to have on the show. And so before I bring someone on, I am unbelievably discerning about who is coming on and what type of conversation we're actually going to have. So in 2022, I went to a women's event in Arizona and I met Veronica Romney, and we kind of hit it off right away. She's got kids. She's an entrepreneur, a business owner, pretty big diva as well in her space. And so I started following her kind of from the shadows, and just appreciated so much of the quality of conversation around marketing that was so different. And I know it sounds cliche, but like a real breath of fresh air in how we speak about marketing and branding and positioning. And so I'm really excited for this conversation. Veronica has a new book out. It's called Identity Marketing, and we're really going to uncover that today. And the reason why I brought Veronica on here to talk about marketing, different from other people in the school space who talk about marketing, is because Veronica's perspective is very, very different and what we need in the private school sector. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Veronica.
Oh, what a great ramp up. Also, I can't believe it's already been 2022. Is that true?
Yes.
That's wild.
Yes. So it's beautiful to see you. And thanks so much for joining me here today.
I'm honored.
So I'd love for people just to know a little bit about you as a person, different from a business owner, who you are as a mom, as a wife. We have most of our audience have families, value family. So just tell us a little bit about who you are before we dive in.
Yeah. So let's talk about all my identities. It's actually how I start the book, because I think as women, we are multi-hyphened identity individuals. We're multi-creatives. We have multiple responsibilities and roles and functions. So yes, I very lovingly identify as a wife of 15 years, as a mother of 11 plus, business owner since birth. I feel like I was born a business owner just because my parents are Cuban immigrants and they started an air conditioning company when they immigrated to this country with nothing, literally nothing. They recently retired, so now their identity is retirees. But I've always had an inclination towards marketing and business. I've always had a passion and interest and curiosity with how we generate things from nothing. And marketing to me, just so everybody understands, yes, I've been a marketer for almost 2 decades, which is wild. Other than my marriage, this is the longest relationship I've ever been in. But I define marketing, I think, a little bit different than I think maybe my colleagues or some of the other legends out there, so to speak. And for me, marketing is just the ethical persuasion of getting someone to do something for their good. And I know no woman who is not a marketer, because I'm constantly in the ethical persuasion of getting my children to brush their teeth every day, for helping my spouse go after his big, audacious professional pursuits and dreams. I'm constantly in the ethical persuasion of getting people to do good and for their good, whether it's the PTA, the local school board, whatever. And it's not a selfish route. It does require psychology. It does require skill and technique to be an effective, persuasive communicator, but it's still an ethical pursuit when you're trying to bring about good in the world. And so that's how I define marketing, and I'm proud to be a marketer. I
love that. I've heard you say this a few times, I'm proud to be a marketer, and I
am.
Incredible, bold identity to step into.
Thank you. Fortunately, and I say this because I understand why it is what it is, but Marketing, like sales, which is like its cousin, we often get a bad reputation. It's sleazy, it's gross, it doesn't feel well, it tends to do more harm than good. If you've been the recipient of bad marketing, you've fallen prey to bad sales techniques, sales people. So like I understand that when you have the skill of persuasion, you can do harm as much as you can do good. And there are a lot of practitioners that if they weren't making money, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Yeah. Like for me, when I interviewed Seth Godin, even on my podcast, like he said that he's like, I can tell a hustler, a grifter from those that are real, because if they weren't getting paid, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And if they stopped doing what they were doing, they wouldn't even be remembered. And I was like, ooh, what a litmus test for a professional who identifies with this craft. And so I can proudly say that like there have been periods where I got paid nothing and I was still a marketer and I was still doing the good work of being a business owner and helping people.
Yeah. So your book is called Identity Marketing, right?
Yes.
And you look at identity marketing different from, let's say, traditional branding, traditional marketing, traditional marketing strategy, or whatever it is. Why is identity marketing needed in today's landscape?
So there's two big paradigm shifts that I think this book, this body of work that I've released, has invited people to consider. So the first shift or reframe is the difference between brand identity and identity marketing. Because oftentimes when you hear the word identity in a business conversation, it's usually in association with branding, brand identity. And so I want to differentiate that. Brand identity is radically critical. I'm not saying it's gone, but it is different. So brand identity is like when you as a brand, whether personal or faceless, you are in control of your gift wrapping. You are in the pursuit of differentiating yourself against anybody else in the marketplace. So you have the colors that you have the logo that you chose, the typography, the brand voice, like it's all the bells and whistles around your gift, your service, your offer, your thing. And we are in control of that. It's an external pursuit to differentiate. Identity marketing is defined as connecting someone's brand so deeply with somebody's core self-explanation, self-label, self-concept, like who I am internally on the inside, who I am, also who I wish to become, that I will actually be buried in your brand. Which is why I start the book with Harley Davidson, because Harley Davidson has one of the most iconic American brands I've ever known in the world. Like, you know Harley, but people are also buried in Harley Davidson caskets or sitting on top of Harley Davidson, like their bikes, into the grave because they want the world to know that they were a hog. Not a Harley Davidson buyer 2754. No, a hog. They're a Harley hog, and they were buried as a hog. So that's what I mean by external brand identity is so radically important. But identity marketing is not the identity of the brand. It's the identity of the individual who associates with its brand. The other big paradigm shift that the book is offering is the difference between buy this energy and be this energy.
Yeah.
So when you are defining your buyer as just a buyer, so just a Harley Davidson consumer, then a lot of your marketing is very outcomes-based marketing, achievement marketing. Buy this to have this, do this, unlock this. It's very outcomes-based. It's very pitchy. It's a very masculine energy, if I'm being really honest, because buy this is very masculine. I'm not saying that as a male and female. It's just a very doing energy, a very yang energy, right? But understanding that your people don't want to just buy something, they want to be something. When you invite your customers to become, to be, it is a different energy. You can feel it even as I talk about it. It's more feminine.
Yeah, and my heart shifts immediately when I heard you say it. Yeah.
It's a self-actualization promise, a self-realization, which is like the highest, tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like we want to become. We're always in the pursuit, especially if you have a religious upbringing or belief system. We are always trying to be better every day, right? To be like our deity, right? To be like more, right? And so be this, like the brands that can alter their messaging, their energy, and have an invitation to be this, become this. They're not in the business of transactions. They're in the business of relationships that stand the test of time. And they don't have to pitch slap somebody into buying from them anymore.
Oh my God. So I have 5 different tentacles, and I'm like, while you were talking, I'm like, which one do I want to pull from? So
sure.
Let's the one that I really want to dive the most into is be this instead of buy this, specifically when it comes to private schools. Because when I think of the private school owner that's listening to this, there's a lot of messaging going on in their head right now where it's like, I have this great product, but there's free pre-K, but there's this, but there's all these other free government funded options. Like, why would someone choose me? And so a lot of the schools, I had an interesting conversation with a franchise owner who owns, I think, 70 schools across the country. And he was saying how his California schools, there was a couple of competitors that moved to town, and his corporate offices in California changed the not very interesting decision to make. The competitors came to town and you got new floors. That's not bringing in new people. And I was like, I'm so glad I'm talking to Veronica on Thursday.
That's
How does a private school owner invite prospective families to be this?
Yeah, so in anticipation of this podcast that I knew that we would do together, I was like really thinking about this, and I was really excited for this conversation. Also, historically, because I'm a private marketing consultant, I've worked with private schools, whether religious or not. Like one of my biggest accounts was private Catholic schools all on the West Coast and stuff. So like you have that, and then you have, secular schools as well. And I've personally paid private tuition for my children as well. So like I am the buyer in this scenario.
Yeah, I love it.
I was thinking about all that, all those perspectives, being a consultant, being the recipient of the great marketing, things like that. And so I think what's really interesting about this specific industry is that there are two, I could maybe even argue three, but there's really two identities at play that you're speaking to. Mm. The first identity is obviously the identity of the child. Like what does it say about my son's potential if he were to go to this academy, this monastery, this alternative form of education versus just what the public schools are offering him? Like, what does it mean for his future, his likelihood of getting in a better school, better tuition, better whatever, advancement? So we, as parental figures making financial decisions on our children's education, there's clearly the identity of the child that needs to be spoken to in its marketing messaging, clearly. But what's also happening is the identity of the parent. What does it say about me, the mother, who makes the decision to put my child in this school versus an alternative? What does it say about me, the father, to put my children, in this choice as opposed to that choice? Like, there are two identities that are occurring simultaneously, which is really interesting because I've seen schools really lean on one or the other, but not talk to both sometimes. It's almost like I used to do a lot of private work with rehabilitation centers, whether drug, alcohol, or even physical therapy. Same thing. You go to their website and you are talking to the person that needs it, the addict themselves, but you're actually speaking more to the family who's doing research on behalf of their loved one who has a problem. The same thing with schools, right? You have the child who's being served, who's actually the one participating in the education, but you have the parental or family figure who's making the decision on behalf of the child. Yeah. So there are two identities that are happening. And I'm like, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, this is juicy. This is fun. We can play with this from a marketing standpoint. Now, I feel bad about that, the example that you gave me that like in the face of competition, they're like, they just upgraded one feature. I'm like, that's such old school, like features and benefits marketing. Like, no, it's like, that's what gyms do. Like, oh, we'll get new gym equipment or we'll add a new spin class. I'm like, no, we're not gyms. We're schools. Like, no, this is like, the stakes are so much higher when it comes to our future, our children's future, right?
That's like one feature. So like other schools, like someone who's listening be like, well, I didn't change the floors. I'm like, okay, well, you just went and changed your website when the competition or you went and bought, new carpets, or you went and decided you're going to slash your tuition rates or whatever it is. Like there's all these, pick your poison.
Exactly. And those are, I think, again, those are really good examples. So when you're talking to your people, what is their marketing problems right now? What do they come to and say, like, what's not working?
Yeah. So again, I think there's a couple of different lanes that you can play in. So there's one lane, which is the private school owner who identifies as everything is out of my control. So there's a new administration, there's new licensing, there's a new government, there's a new licensing code, there's so many free preschool options, there's charter schools, there's all of these fill in the blank of external factors that are not in my control that are contributing to my low enrollment or whatever it is. So that's like one lane. Then there's another lane of people who really believe in their product, really believe in what it is that they're delivering to the children, but really struggle with understanding that they serve more than one type of family. So when you were talking about two identities, right, where you have the child's identity, you have the family's identity within a school, even if it's a Jewish school, a Catholic school, a regiment inspire, it doesn't matter. You're still attracting multiple types of family avatars. And that also becomes very confusing for them because you have multilingual families, you have very young families, you have older families, you have single family homes, you have same-sex couple homes, you have all of these types of families. And you're like, how? You can't talk to the family like this that you're talking. So that I would say that those are the two biggest ones maybe that they're struggling with. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the latter first.
Okay.
I think this is fascinating because I just did some work with the University of Utah. So I recently flew out to the University of Utah, and their continuing education division was struggling with its brand identity because they had 8 programs that would be sold to ages 5 to 105. That's a big spread. That's a very big buyer persona that they literally have programs that suit 5-year-olds. And then they have programs that have financial discretionary income and they're going to Thailand to learn photography for 5 figures and they're in their senior sunset years. So like, how in the bloody world would we be able to do this properly? And in the past, they would only do brand identity work, which is all that external stuff. And it never worked because you had different leaders of different programs and no one brand identity was agreed upon by anybody, let alone then approved by main campus, because continuing education is not the same thing as main campus. So the bureaucracy, the internal strife, it's so funny. I walked into this 2-day on-site experience because I do that all the time. And like, I knew to some degree what I was walking into, but not fully just how complicated everything was and how contentious it was. But they had never done identity marketing ever. They had only done brand identity work, which is the focus on the brand, and nobody could agree. So we're like, all right, everybody stop. We're not going to focus on your beautiful brand identity. We're going to focus on the identity of the person you seek to serve. Are there attributes? Is there an emotional identity? Not even a demographic identity, an emotional identity, an emotional connection that is encompassing of both a 5-year-old and a 105-year-old in programs that teach people how to speak English for the first time versus programs that teach them how to shoot photography in Thailand. Like, I mean, it's so, talk about how disparate these things are. So I have this 4-part framework in my book. And I mean, listen, for $25, you can learn the 4-part framework. It's 4 steps to leverage the psychology of identity. So I accompany them through the framework personally, and we walk through piece by piece. Day 1 is the first 2 pieces where you find it and you prove some of these marketable identity concepts. And it's messy. And sometimes you're even frustrated because you're like, oh. And then day 2, when you're giving context to the name and you're dressing and personifying the identity, everything's settled. I can't reveal to you legally. I literally can't reveal to you what they're going with. But what I can disclose, and I think this is a really good learning opportunity, is sometimes we get really hung up on demographic identities and not emotional identities. So let me give you an example, right? You're seeing it without getting political, but you are seeing it in political marketing spheres. There's identity politics, which is like 35-year-old woman with 2.5 kids on average, right? And then there's a sentiment identity, and there is values-based identities that one party did much better than the other party. So we saw that play out in 2024. What we're also seeing play out, I think, is the fact that even if we identify as one thing, the source of the identity has changed. So I will give you a personal example. My little sister was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, 33 years old, October 2023. She now can say she's a breast cancer survivor, so I don't want anybody to listen to this podcast and worry. She's on the other side. But there was the me, her sister, her older sister, before her cancer diagnosis, and then there's the me and my identity on the other side of that diagnosis. And what I mean by that is, before Valerie got sick, or we knew of her sickness, I should say, I had always identified as a fit person. I've always identified as a healthy, inclined, fit. I care about those things. I try to eat properly. I work out, all those things. But if I'm being really honest, the source of that identity was really vanity. Like, I wanted to look a particular way. I wanted to aesthetically be this, or have this size, or have this number on the weight scale. And then as soon as my sister got sick and like literally fought for her life, I could care less. I like threw out the weight, like the scale in my house. I don't even have a scale in the house anymore. So I'm still an identifying fit human. I still work out all the time. I still make wise choices with the things I put in my body. However, the source of my identity is longevity, not vanity. I don't care so much about what I look like. I want to live to 100 years old. I never want my 2 children to witness their mother going through that. I never want to go through chemo if I can ever, like, God willing, avoid that. So like my identity has been consistent my whole life, but the why, the source of that identity has radically deepened and changed. That is happening to every consumer on the planet today.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people are frustrated is that the marketing messaging of their schools, of their programs did so well a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and now it's not working. So like, why is it not working? It's because the identity of the person you seek to sell or serve has changed, or the source of their identity has changed. And it's happened to everybody by force. Who I was pre-pandemic, who I was post-pandemic. The things I invest in today are radically different than the things I used to, even as a business owner. The choices I made, if I looked at my P&L and the choices and the investments I made in 2022 and who I spent my time with versus who I'm spending my time with now in 2025, very different. Still business owner on identity, but the choices that I make that affirm the kind of business owner I want to be, the kind of parent I want to be, the kind of provider I want to be has changed because we've been through some stuff. We've been through a pandemic. We've been through a stifling political atmosphere. We can't pay for our house. We barely pay for eggs. That's ridiculous. Like think about, and then the AI stuff, like think about all the stuff that we've been through, forced or otherwise, that has forced people to re-examine who they are. And that's why, like, if you're still standing here today listening to this podcast with the same marketing messaging of like a year, 2, 3 years ago, we have a problem. You have a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a lot. I know. That was a lot.
So good. And like, I wish I could just sit with coffee in front of a fireplace with you and record for several hours. So there's 2 parts that I want to pull out here and kind of help make some parts of your framework very practical for the leader that's listening to this. I think one thing that I want to double tap on that I think it's really important is that there are defining moments as a collective society, and then there are defining moments as an individual. For me, it was October 7th. My father-in-law passed away. Like there are defining moments in who as a collective and then individually. My father-in-law passed away. I had 2 consecutive miscarriages 6 months apart from each other. And so these moments are like, I'm a different person. I'm not going back to who I was pre all of these defining moments.
Right.
So I think that's such a huge point to pull out here. And I think for the person that's listening to this episode, this conversation and saying, okay, I've changed. The community that I'm serving has changed. And then the solution that they're going to is let's hire a website developer who's going to upgrade our website. Let's hire an interior designer who's going to upgrade the internals of our building. So walk us through, one of the parts that you talk about in your book is naming the identity is crucial for that emotional connection. Are schools really able to do this? Like maybe we pull out this part over here, meet that emotional connection.
Yeah. And I also want to say the website refresh will come.
Yeah, I'm not against website refreshes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Again, brand identity is everything. I'm such a proponent. I mean, clearly
you're living it.
I curate my brand with so much intentionality. However, if you're putting your brand refresh, your brand rebrand before understanding your consumers rebrand, you're doing it backwards. Like, I'm just going to be very blunt. Yeah. Like, do not put the cart before the horse, right? You change your marketing assets in step 4 of my framework, not step 1. Yeah. Step 1 is we have to find those new marketable identities in the parents, in the children. 2, you have to validate that. And then 3, which is what you're asking me, is like, once we have this marketable, found, validated, adopted identity, how do you be so profound? It can't be gimmicky. Like I think this is what's so critical. Like there's so many marketing strategies and tactics out there. And when done quickly and shallow.
Yeah.
It comes off really gimmicky, and it just is like, not to like be Gen Z, but like cringe. Like it's just cringe, just gross.
So let's get into the first part then of your framework of like being a marketable identity. Let's see if we can deconstruct that here.
Yeah. So for example, the first thing that I have my private clients or anybody who goes through one of our group work, virtual workshop experiences, we become secret shoppers. So step one is you're here to find a marketable identity. We have to entrench ourselves almost like social anthropologists in the people we seek to serve as if we've never met them before. Because what happens is a lot of people will audit themselves, which is a really great practice. But when they're auditing themselves online, what they're really trying to figure out is how good they look. Like, how good do we look? How modern is our social media profiles? What are people saying about us? Like, it is a more egotistical pursuit, which again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but let's just call it what it is. What I'm teaching you in the book and these workshops is that you're going to become an identity secret shopper. What you're looking for isn't so much how they like you or don't like you, or what they think about you, or what you look like in the mirror. Let's leave that, just put that on the table for a second. What you're looking for, what you're investigating is the identity and the language of the people in reference to themselves. So what are mothers saying about themselves, good or bad? What are father figures in these sales conversations or in these discovery calls? What are they saying about themselves? What are the children, if you're speaking to older children, what are they saying about, like, what you're trying to actually secret shop through the internet, through the Reddit threads and the Facebook group and the whatever that's available to you, is you're actually trying to figure out what your consumer is saying in regards to their sense of self-worth and identity and aspirational identity. That's what we're trying to figure out. So like, how would you know that Veronica identifies as a fit person? Well, she buys Lululemon, she goes to the gym every day, she eats a particular way, she has a barcode app that scans barcodes of foods to know if it's carcinogenic. Like, I exhibit these behaviors, but what am I saying about myself? That's more important. So yes, I exhibit behaviors of a fit identity, but more importantly, how do I view my identity? What do I say about it? How does it make me feel about myself? What is the source of that identity? That's what I mean by secret shopping, is you're basically looking for that language that they're using to express their self-concept, self-label, self-worth. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I want to touch on that for a moment, because again, when we talk about, there's so much information around parenting and about family structures. And I can't quote exactly Brene Brown's quote, but she has this thing that, like, people say things around, is it children's first? Is it the couple first? Or is it the family first? Something to that extent. And she always talks about it's the family. It's the cohesive family unit, because it's not one comes at the expense of the other. It's sometimes mom and dad are coming first in this moment. Sometimes the kids are coming first in this moment. But going to the family structure for a second, a big portion of this audience that's listening is childcare providers, which means they're serving children birth to, let's say, 5 years old, which means there's a particular identity of a parent that's going back to work, sending their child at 6, 8, 9 weeks old into the hands of a stranger. And there's so much emotional angst that's wrapped up in that decision to do that. And I think a lot of times the childcare owner is sometimes in misalignment. So I'll give an example here, and maybe you can help like deconstruct. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you two things. So I'll give you the story of a company that went through this experience with us, and exactly to your point of family identity. So there's a company called Talkbox.mom. They work with tons of schools, and they actually a lot of government assisted programs as well that are approved by, and they're very entrenched in the homeschooling community, because they're basically teaching children foreign languages. Which doesn't mean, obviously, a competitor to like Rosetta Stone for the OGs of us, or like the Duolingos, the modern versions of us, right? But Talkbox.mom, they have a very bold promise. Like, they make a promise that you'll start speaking a foreign language the same day you buy their program. Now, the company's name is literally Talkbox.mom. So who's the buyer?
The mom.
It's literally the name of the company is Talkbox.mom, because 98% of the time, mom is making the financial decision on behalf of the kids. Now, when they did their identity secret shopping, the language, the overabundance of the repetitive use of the word family, but also fluency, fluent. Not so much bilingual, but the ability to speak with ease, So even though the mother who's in the name of the company is literally 98% of the time the buyer, she's not buying TalkBox.mom because she wants to be a woman who speaks Spanish. She's buying it so that her family can all together speak Spanish before they go on their trip to Mexico, or they speak French before they go on their big saved up family trip to Paris to go to Disney World Paris or whatever, right?
Yes.
So what she's really buying for is the aspirational identity of a fluency family, a family who can be fluent. So now it's interesting because bilingual came up a lot. But what we discovered in step 2, when we tried to prove the concept of maybe a bilingual bunch or a bilingual whatever, was that bilingual is actually wildly intimidating. People shy away from that because it's like, even me as a 100% Cuban American, my parents were born and raised in Cuba. Spanish was my first language. I shy to even call myself bilingual because
Really?
I'm not proficient in Spanish the way that I am in the English language. I cannot read and write as well in Spanish like I do in English. I can't even roll my R's. It's so embarrassing. Like, it's just a thing. So even me, I find that word to be intimidating. The other word that came up a lot was talk. So one of the ideas or concepts was like, oh, what if we call our people the talk tribe? They put it out there in step 2, and the response was like, hey, we don't like the word tribe. That's cultural appropriation.
Okay.
See? So, but what was really interesting is that they had all of these repetitive words and they started putting these together. That's what marketers do. We have all this beautiful language that is really reflecting that the mother is making an aspirational identity purchase on behalf of the family's identity to be this thing, not just her personal identity. But we had to validate it, and that's what I'm saying. So what eventually came to, and I can disclose this, is Fluency Family. So they're not changing the name of the company. It's still TalkBox.mom. But what about the Fluency Family podcast? Or Fluency Family sponsorship opportunities or collaborations with other organizations that are not just foreign language, but they're in the pursuit and the service of a family that are complementary. Like, their expansion because of this found identity is so much wider because the lane got wider beyond just mom.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting that you were the bilingual. So I speak 4 languages, but if I'm using your terminology, I am bilingual only in 2 because I can only read, write, and speak in Hebrew as well as I do English. I also speak Russian and Yiddish, but not in the same way. Like, I can't read and write Russian. So I think that's so interesting of just like how we identify kind of in that context. So for the parent, again, going back to the school owner for a second, who has this audience and they get very caught up in the money components of like meaning when I tell them to do these exercises, right, and I invite them to go and do the secret shopping and go have conversation, the things that always come back are, we love your program, we just can't afford it. We love what you're offering, but we can't afford it. And everything consistently comes back to price. And I'm like, you're missing a layer. If the layer is always, we love everything, we just can't afford it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with price is an interesting objection as a marketer. Like, one of the first things that they'll teach us in like school is that like marketing or price is never the real objection.
Yeah.
Especially with credit cards, especially with the amount of like creative funding that's available. I mean, even PayPal, you can pay it later, and like you layaways at Walmart for Christmas. Like, the amount of creative funding available to families is out of control. Agreed. So when people say it's price, we are often trained to be like, that is really not what it is. It's really not. It's because you have not overextended the value beyond the price point, or they don't feel like it's a scream of a deal. Because that's what's really interesting about when economies tighten. Even those of us who have discretionary incomes, like, and I'm just being really honest, like my husband and I both work, so we are a dual income household. We have discretionary income. We have been really savvy. We have investment funds, all these things. We still pride ourselves as individuals who can get a good deal.
Yeah.
And that means even an $80,000 car, but it felt like I got a good deal. So like what's very interesting to me is when you have price objections and you know you're talking to somebody who really could, it's just because you haven't given them enough both of an emotional but also a logical, compelling reason, persuasive argument as to understand why that is just a screaming deal for what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. when it comes to emotional connection, they have all the kind of features down pat of like, we have flexible scheduling and we have this and small class sizes. And I'm like, everyone looks exactly the same. I'm like, you all offer all of these things. And so when we look at the school owners that are, struggling with enrollment because of all these, just generic marketing or generic kind of phrases, is where can the owner start for that emotional connection and almost creating alignment with themselves first?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a personal experience. So I am that profile that you were describing earlier. Like I went back to work 8 weeks with Miles and then 12 weeks with James. And I really wanted to go back to work. That was really important to me, but man, I cried and cried like that's a little person in somebody else's care. And we didn't put him in preschool until he was 2 because my mom kind of, my Cuban mother, was like, I will do it. Like she stepped in, and I'm so thankful. Okay. But even at 2, handing your child to someone who's not blood related is like terrifying. And like you said, it put me in a shame and a cycle, shame and guilt and all of the different things, because like family values are number one for me, as much as I pride myself in being a provider and pride myself as being an ambitious woman that I am, right? So I remember we were investigating, courting, researching, exploring different private preschools in around our area. And there was the very, very expensive ones, and there was the really cheap ones, and there was this, and there was the Montessori, modality versus more structured modalities. I mean, like, right, we're going through all the things. And I won't disclose who it was, but the one that we ended up choosing, we were sitting down, and like, I think they were asking me really good questions, because I started to reveal that, like, yeah, I just feel bad, the idea that he's spending more time with you than he is with me Monday through Friday. And like, kind of like stares at me. And she was like, well, I hear what you're saying, but by the time that your son graduates this year alone, his vocabulary will expand to 20,000 words, which would not happen if he was actually at home with just you. So like, you leaving him with us, his development, his progress will supersede what you'll be able to do. And you can be really proud of that. And I was like, like, my credit card. Here's my credit card. Here's my credit card, my bra, whatever. Like, take my firstborn. Yeah. Did you see what I'm saying? Like, here I came with the real strife. Wasn't the expense. I mean, we spent like $2,000 a month or whatever it was. Like, it's not cheap. It's more than the car. It's more than sometimes the mortgage. Like that. It wasn't that. It was like the real strife was like, I felt bad about giving my kid to someone else's care. And then when she kind of showed me that they would be able to take him further than my abilities would if he were to stay at home as an alternative, I was like, take him. Because now I'm a great mom to give him this opportunity. Yeah. And I didn't see it that way before.
So most people would respond to that thing is like, well, we have small class sizes. Well, you don't have to worry. We have licensed teachers. All of those things still don't speak to my emotional feeling of what I'm going through and what Correct. It feels like to bring my child here.
Yeah, because really the identity that I walked into was I'm a bad mom. Yes. And they showed me how by having him come to this program, made me a good mom. Yeah. Not a good mom, the best mom possible for him. And I was like, like that's what I mean by you have right to the beginning of our whole entire conversation. Yeah. That was a great example where they elevated my identity as a mother from bad mom to great mom. But they also made me excited to think that my son was going to go from like 0 words to 20,000 words, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if a school leader, there's so much in here, and I invite everyone to really go back and re-listen to different parts that most resonated with you. But if you want the private school owner to remember, 2 things from this conversation, what is that?
I think the first thing that I would tell you is that identity obviously is like king and queen, literally, in these type of conversations. Like one of the things that we in the Secret Shopper experience, one of the things that we will tell you in the book and also in our workshop is one of the best sources is to go back if you record sales calls. So let's say you have these virtual sales meetings or discovery calls, and like if they happen to be recorded or they happen to have those like fancy AI, note takers, going through the transcript of those calls is like, if I was your rainmaker, if I came on for 2 days to be your private rainmaker, that's the first thing I would do is I would be going through those transcripts with so much like fine detail magnifying glass like intensity, because in those calls is where they will disclose, if asked the right questions, how they really identify both for a child, for themselves, and like, again, let's argue, even the identity of the family. You have a parental identity, you have a child identity, and you have a family identity. That's all being served in this specific industry that we're talking about right here, right now. So that's like number one that I would say. And number two, if you just get stubborn, you got to call out. If you think that the only way forward is to compete on price or number of comprehensive features, you will lose. You will lose. And over again, price is a race to the bottom, and none of us strive to be Amazon and Walmart. And anybody and everybody can have more features and bells and whistles than you. That is a very, very guaranteed losing race. So I beg you not to have that be your story this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Veronica, where can the school leaders go to find more about you besides for going and purchasing the book, which you can buy everywhere? For the leader that's thinking about, wow, like I really want to do this work, where can they go to find out more about you?
Yeah. So if you go to veronicaromney.com, you can hear my story. We also have the case study. We did a whole case study of the University of Utah experience. I think would be very worthwhile for your people in particular. I love that. And then the book, we have a whole world for you. Think of it like Hogwarts. We have a whole identity marketing world for you of gifts and so many fun things on identitymarketingbook.com.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you so much. This has been just, oh my gosh, such an amazing conversation.
Thank you.